There's a lot of people out there who are excited for the next cinema camera, the next box style camera. But I've really found myself preferring the hybrid style, the mirrorless, the photography video style cameras for quite a while now. Even though I have the option to use pretty much whatever camera I would want, I still favor the smaller, more compact hybrids. But before we get started, like this video, hit the subscribe button, and consider joining the channel. Channel members get exclusive access to Filmmaker Alchemy, behind-the-scenes lessons and insights on the business of video production. Learn how to turn your content into gold. I want to spend some time talking through my thought process because this is probably, I don't know, maybe it's a hot take, maybe it's a little controversial to say I prefer a hybrid camera over a cinema camera or a box style camera. I've shot with plenty of those style cameras over the years. And I think after a while of doing that, you can come to love them. I certainly love the Ursa Mini for all that it offers, but I also ended up preferring the smaller, more compact cameras as they became better and more feature rich. We finally got features like good color, 10-bit 422 color in a hybrid mirrorless camera. We got things like really good log profiles, Vlog, finally Vlog, real Vlog in the Lumix cameras, not Vlog L like we suffered through or like a couple years on the GH5, but true Vlog on a Lumix camera. Great, incredible feature. We've got 4K, 6K, 8K in some of these cameras these days. Good readout speeds on these sensors, even though they are rolling shutter. We have good readout speeds. The inputs, the outputs, everyone wanted XLR for the longest time because XLR was the audio standard for so long. And now we have incredible microphones, wireless microphones recording 32-bit float audio on the DJI Mic 2, and it's 3.5 millimeter inputs and outputs. We've gone away from XLR. I mean, it's still an industry standard for, professional audio. That's what I'm running here, XLR, but it's not as ubiquitous. It's not as much of a necessity as it once was. And we do have XLR adapters for these cameras, like on the Lumix cameras. We have the XLR adapter for things like the GH5, GH6, certainly, and now they have the XLR2 adapter for the GH7, and it also works with the S5 Mark II. Sony has their own XLR adapters. I'm sure Canon does, Nikon probably does as well. So that's no longer a critical issue. The only thing still missing from this whole atmosphere around a hybrid, or this whole infrastructure around hybrid, is built-in NDs. That's the one thing I miss, and I wish I've worked around it with external ND filters, no variable NDs for me. No, thank you. I don't want the polarization. I just want static fixed NDs. And there's cool swing away doors you can get for the front of your lens that kind of make it easy to hot swap ND filters or just swing one in, swing one away. I've talked about that in other videos as well. But given the choice, do I want the big, bulky, expensive, heavy camera that requires bigger, heavier, more expensive batteries just to have a bigger camera? No, not really. I love things like in-body image stabilization. The IBIS systems on these Lumix cameras is incredible. And there was a time before we had IBIS where these small, compact hybrid cameras, things like the GH2, the GH3, the GH4, or the 5D Mark III, the 5D Mark IV. When we didn't have IBIS, you needed the rig, you needed the shoulder mount, you needed all this extra support to make it stable. And in that time, in that kind of period, it made sense to get the bigger camera because it was just heavier, it was more stable by default. Something like the Ursa Mini is pretty rock solid, even though it doesn't have IBIS, but you don't need to necessarily kit it out with all this extra junk just to give it some stability, some support. I had to do things like that with the GH4 or the GH2 or the GH1 back in the day. I needed the shoulder rig for that stability. IBIS solves that problem completely, and it's something I wouldn't want. Something like the FX6 from Sony for the great autofocus. It has the internal NDs, but it doesn't have IBIS. And that's one thing that to me is now a critical part of my workflow. Something like the GH5S that got rid of the IBIS for the better low light performance. That was not a trade-off I was willing to make. I can always bring lights. I can usually set them up. And if it's a little noisy or a little grainy and low light, so be it. That's 1% of my production. Stability is 100% of every production. Whether you're using a tripod or not, there's almost always a time where you want to get something handheld. You want that IBIS built right in, and it works remarkably well. Sony, Canon, less so, but with Lumix, I am more than happy with their IBIS, and they've even advanced it with like their high stabilization now on these Lumix cameras. The stability is ridiculous, and don't even necessarily need a gimbal. You can use it if you want that particular look, but I like the handheld look. I like the IBIS that I'm getting. So having something that like an FX6 that doesn't have it, sorry, I don't really want that. I want the smaller form factor. Yes, there was a time where we needed the big cameras to put on the show, to impress clients, to make a splash, make a wave. Yes, this is video, it's not photo. Because, well, it's, 10 years ago, that's what everyone thought. If you showed up with a hybrid mirrorless camera, oh, you taking pictures? Are you doing photos? No, this is video. It's a video camera. And there's that learning curve. If you're in the industry, you kind of get it. The GH4 shot 4K, the GH5 did 4K 60. Incredible features and a super affordable price point. Unheard of at that time. Clients didn't know. They thought you were just taking pictures. So yes, you would show up with an Ursa Mini or something like that, and people feel like it's professional, it's video. Nowadays, everyone's caught on. Everyone's caught up. People know that you can make TikToks on your phone. They know you can shoot Instagram Reels on your phone, YouTube Shorts you can do on your phone. You've got streamers, and everyone's using their webcam for Zoom calls or Teams meetings. People are a lot more familiar nowadays that cameras don't necessarily need to be a particular shape or size to be professional or to be high quality or to get the job done. And when you look at my kit, my rig with the S5 Mark II currently, or the GH7 with an LCD monitor, with a base plate, with a slightly larger small rig battery, still compact, still, everything's affordable, everything's decently sized for what I like to hold in my hands. It's not overwhelming. It's not too heavy. I don't need to take breaks. It's got the IBIS. It's got all this great stuff in it. And it looks like a video camera. It looks like a hybrid video camera. It doesn't look like a box camera. It doesn't look like a cinema camera, but it doesn't look like a photography camera either. And that's the way I like to shoot. It gives me a lot more flexibility in terms of the coverage I'm able to get, the speed at which I'm able to operate. There's so much with the bigger cameras, even if they're small, they're not the old cinema cameras of 20 years ago where they were giant. Everything is fairly compact and small. Something like the FX6 is quite small. The Ursa Mini is mini, I suppose. But they're still bigger, they're still bulkier, they're still heavier than something like a photography camera, a hybrid, a mirrorless camera. And I love the ability to shoot handheld, to get any shot, to be stable if I need to be stable. The Lumix cameras have a boost image stabilization mode that basically looks like you're filming from a tripod if you need that look. And you can do it all handheld. And I don't get tired. I don't get burnt out. I don't have extra stuff to carry with me. If you're doing any kind of travel production, bringing bigger cameras, bigger batteries means bigger tripods, bigger stands, bigger cases, heavier stuff. And there's always a time and a place for that. I can't say it's the wrong answer. It's just a personal preference, a creative choice. And I think there's a lot of people that think bigger is better, heavier is more professional, more expensive is more professional. And I don't think that's the case. I think if you think a little bit differently, a little bit outside the box, if you embrace what you can get out of a hybrid, you can do so much more than you can do with a cinema box camera or anything like that. Or you can do an equal amount, whatever your preference is. I think the hybrid style of shooting that I've embraced allows me to shoot something as simple and basic as a TikTok or an Instagram reel using features like open gate. Again, kind of an exclusive thing to these Lumix cameras. There are other cameras that do open gate, but Lumix, I think, does an incredible job with it. And you can shoot vertical TikToks, you can shoot Instagram reels for something that is bigger and bulkier than an iPhone, but it's not a cinema camera intended to make a film that you're then shooting TikToks with. But if I want to do something documentary style or a little bit more commercial style, or you want to shoot a wedding, or you want to do anything, it is kind of the Swiss Army knife of production. These hybrid cameras, they are so powerful. We got all the features that for the longest time we were suffering without, like bad codecs, bad color, limited frame rate options, resolution, the binning, the pixel binning, like all the problems of the DSLR revolution. You know, we got the full frame look, we got the full frame aesthetic, we got the shallow depth of field, but we sacrificed a lot of the professional features. Those professional features have slowly made their way into these hybrid cameras over the years. And I think if you dismiss them as not professional, not feature rich, not good enough, that's not a real video camera, which is still a thing people say to this very day. I think you're missing kind of the value of what can be done and what can be achieved with something like an S5 Mark II or a GH7. They are so incredibly powerful and yet smaller, cheaper, more compact. Means the accessories are smaller and cheaper usually. And you can rig them out to your heart's desire. They make the cool cages now where it kind of turns a hybrid into a box style camera. I think that's kind of missing the point of why you would pick a hybrid camera. But if that's your style and that's what you want a cage that makes it look like a box camera, you can certainly do that. My preference is to embrace the value of hybrid mirrorless production, to shoot like a photographer, but be able to do video, cinematic video even, shooting open gate, shooting 6K, 8K, whatever the job calls for. The power of a hybrid camera is so much more than a YouTube video. This lets you, this is popular on YouTube. You can make YouTube content. Yes, you can. And you can also do everything else and everything in between, from short form social to long form documentary to features, even if that's your passion. You want to make a short film, you can shoot it on any camera you want, but then you look at there's feature films being shot on iPhones nowadays. Maybe it's more of a gimmick, maybe it's more of a marketing tactic, but regardless, there's something for everybody. And I think to write off hybrids as not professional is kind of silly, kind of foolish, kind of short-sighted, because they only get better. And I think ultimately, when you look at the trajectory of a company like Red, the Red 1, big, bulky, clunky, awkward to use, it would overheat, it had its problems. But then they came out with the Epic and the Scarlett, smaller, boxier cameras. Actually still incredibly small, even by today's standards. The Epic and Scarlett were very small. Now you would rig them out, you'd kit them out and make them a little bit bigger. Something like the Ari, Alexa, the first one, bigger, bulkier. Now the Alexa cameras have gotten smaller over time. And there does seem to be a kind of a breaking point for thermal management, how many fans are in there, what kind of processor chips need to be in that camera to make it function. But there's this next step further, the photography style cameras that are built to just fit right in your hand. You can take them anywhere. You can shoot anything, photo, video. If you're doing video production, you need to be able to take photos, whether it's for a blog post, for a thumbnail, for an Instagram post. I don't care. If you're shooting video, you need to be able to take photo too. If you have a film camera, a cinema camera, how are you going to take your photography? You're going to bring a whole extra camera just to shoot your photos? These are the things people do, and I look at it and go, that doesn't really make sense in today's world when you can do it all from one device. Maybe there's sacrifices that get made. If your goal is to have the ultimate image quality, then yes, there are big expensive cameras that can do that for you. But if you need a general purpose camera that can do all of it reasonably well, incredibly well actually, considering most people are streaming on Netflix, watching through compression, they're viewing on their tiny smartphone screen, streaming over their LTE connection. The way consumers are consuming content these days is not pixel peeping the highest resolution Blu-ray they can find. There are those customers out there. There are the avid enthusiasts who will buy the Blu-ray remaster for the ultimate image quality. But your general population, your mass market audience is streaming everything. And half the time, they're not even watching in 4K. They're watching in 1080p or 720p or even low resolution, on an iPhone. There's a lot of different ways that content gets consumed, and to, sacrifice your production, to make your life difficult, more expensive, more challenging, again, dealing with bigger, bulkier stuff, just to make something that's the best there is that no one ever gets to see, no one ever gets to consume it that way. I think that's unfortunate. I think that's kind of sad that you're so passionate about achieving this end result that you could have done easier, more economical, you could have done more. You could have made more short films, more documentaries. You could have been more productive had you taken a slightly different approach, a different mindset, and gone with something that just worked a little bit better, more efficiently. That's one of my main priorities is efficiency. And that's why I love these hybrid cameras, because they allow me to maximize that. I'm not saying shoot on your iPhone. I think that's incredibly inefficient. For as much as the Apple commercials will tell you, oh, the iPhone can shoot a movie and you plug an SSD in and you can shoot ProRes and you can do all this great stuff on your iPhone. I still think it's clunky. I still think you're going to have to jump through all the hoops. You have to do more hoops to jump through actually shooting on your iPhone. What are you like buying an extra iPhone as your camera? Or is it your actual phone and you're taking phone calls during a shoot? It just doesn't really make sense to me. I think you need to buy a dedicated tool if you're doing this professionally, but it doesn't have to be the most expensive. It doesn't have to be the biggest. It doesn't have to be the bulkiest. Things keep getting smaller, but these hybrids also keep getting better. And I'm excited for the cameras coming this year and next, because that trajectory is only going up. Something like an S1H Mark II should be incredibly powerful. The new cameras coming from Canon and Sony should be way more powerful than anything we've had before. That's kind of the nature of technology, and that's the name of the game when it comes to marketing. They've got to increase their features. They got to increase their power over time, and we're now hitting this, I don't know, maybe this convergence of, yes, you have professional broadcast cameras that have the inputs and outputs and all the features that broadcast needs, and you have cinema cameras that maybe cater to a cinema environment of shooting. But those markets are kind of small, I would say. And there's this blossoming, emerging creator, I don't know that it's at maturity yet. I don't know what trajectory it'll take into the future, but you've got way more people creating video content than ever before. Video is in such high demand, from TikTok to Instagram to YouTube to wherever, that you can embrace the hybrid cameras and get those feature-rich cinema aesthetics, the cinema, those components that you want in a cinema. You can get it from a hybrid now. It's all there, ready to go. Are there sacrifices? Not really, not so much, other than like internal NDs. Maybe a certain camera can't shoot RAW, but do you really need to shoot RAW anyway? There's a lot of these features that maybe aren't as necessary anymore. It really isn't that big of a sticking point, because the base codecs we're getting are just really good. And there is no sacrifice. There is no compromise. You're able to do so much with these hybrid cameras. And that's why I can't explain it enough. The power, other than just, you believe it or not, take it for what you will. There are people who get it. And there are people who say, no, that's, buy a real video camera. You're just missing out. That's all I can say. And I can only hype up hybrids so much myself, because it's the nature. You're going to either believe me or not. And when it comes to it, I really don't care what you end up doing. I think everyone has their preference. Everyone has their own opinion. Everyone has their own choices to make. But I choose to use these cameras. It's not I have to. I can't afford the more expensive one, the bigger one. Oh, I don't have access to the bigger, more expensive one. No, I'm actively choosing to shoot on something like the S5 Mark II, as opposed to the Ursa Mini or the Burano or the FX6 or the FX9. Shooting Lumix hybrid, something like a GH7 or an S5 Mark II, is an active choice I am making, because it gives me so many more benefits than any of these other bigger, more expensive cameras can offer. I don't know. It's almost a paradox, or I don't know the right word to describe it, but you would think that there's some compromise, there's some sacrifice by getting the cheaper thing, by getting the smaller device. And the opposite is true nowadays. I'm getting more out of the cheaper, smaller device than I'd be getting out of something like a Blackmagic Pixis, for example. There's plenty of people out there who I'm sure love that camera and get the most out of it. But for me, that's not what I'm looking for. That's not what I'm after. I'm after the hybrid mirrorless. That's my choice. That's what I want to be filming with. Even if you showed up and said, here you go, here's a Burano, you can use this now for free, I would still probably prefer the hybrid. Just truthfully, I just would. And I don't know if I don't know what you can assign that to, other than me just looking at production, how I approach things, and wanting the best of photography, the best of video, the best of filmmaking, documentary, whatever. I want the best of all of it in one device. So I have the one tool that I bring to the job and I can do anything, and I can do it faster, cheaper, more efficiently than any other way I can imagine. It's an active choice to shoot this way. And I think everyone has their own preference. You might say, oh, I like a different look. I like a different style. I like to hold the camera a little bit different. And that's all fine. But it is missing out to think that someone shooting hybrid is making some sacrifice or compromise. In fact, it's the exact opposite is true. I'm doing it for the benefit of the device.